Hi lacrosse fans, welcome back to episode number 11 of the Sticks and Picks Lacrosse podcast presented by Lacrosse Unlimited. They provide the best lacrosse equipment, apparel, and lacrosse footwear since 1990. Be sure to check out their website at lacrosseunlimited.com for all your lacrosse needs. I'm your host, Will Petchnik, alongside co-host Jake Fox. This week's episodes are unfiltered and are not recommended for children to listen to. Our guest today played 4 full seasons at Notre Dame and was a fifth-year walk-on to the Fighting Irish football team. He talks about his controversial punch in the PLL last year and shares some great stories about his lacrosse career to date. Born and raised in Wheat Ridge, Colorado, he went on to play at Notre Dame. He was an NCAA All-American and All-ACC conference team and decided to take a fifth year at school to walk on the Notre Dame football team. After graduating, he played professional lacrosse for the Denver Outlaws of the MLL, winning back-to-back titles in 2015 and 2016. After a few years and a coaching stint at the Air Force Academy, he signed with the San Diego Seals after a stint with the Colorado Mammoth. He currently plays for the Redwoods Lacrosse Club in the PLL and has one of the better social media personalities in lacrosse. Welcome to the podcast, Nick Ossello.
That's a nice bit there at the end. I wasn't expecting that. Normally people have less than nice things to say. So thank you for the nice intro. I appreciate that.
I'll say this. My dad's a pretty big jackass on Twitter, and he loves you and loves listening to your stuff, especially when you go after some guys. And he's a big fan of Negative Friday, so he's going to love this one.
Good. I'm excited. The Negative Fridays campaign is really picking up some steam, and with all the bullshit, fake positivity from guys who are pricks on the field and then pretend to be great guys off, that I'm pretty excited to share a little bit of negativity with the world. So.
Oh, we're definitely excited to have you on. So we're going to get started here and just kind of dive into how you got involved with the game of lacrosse and growing up in Colorado. I'm not sure how big the game was when you started, but can you kind of just talk about how you got involved with it and what the game was like then?
Yeah, so I was fortunate enough so my dad's originally from Montana and my mom's originally from Alaska. So they for how little lacrosse that there was in Colorado when I was growing up, they truly had never seen it or even were aware of what the hell it was, just because it's still not big in Montana and it's still not big in Alaska. So one of my dad's buddies, actually, he grew up, he played lacrosse at Chapman in California, and he was trying to get a league going, youth league, and pretty much like a lot of the like my dad's buddies and my buddy, like my childhood friends, it's 100 times, I'm sure you've heard the story of, we were all sitting playing baseball and we were getting kind of bored with it. And, baseball is certainly great in some regards, but when you have energy and you're a kid and it just sucks and you're like, scratching your tiny pecker in left field and you just want to get off the field. My buddy went up to my dad, or my dad's friend was like, hey, there's a sport called lacrosse. Like, if you're sick of baseball, you can run around, like they burn all their energy, they can hit each other with sticks and this and that. And my dad grew up, like football, wrestling. He was like, oh, like another contact sport in the spring, like, let's get you signed up. So my first year, I started playing, I think in 5th grade, for the first youth team in my area. And it was just, a bunch of dads that didn't really know what the hell was going on. We got some old equipment donated from, the town over, and kind of the rest is history. First practice, it was a win-win for everybody. I was tired. I was excited at the new sport. And, I'm sure I went to bed exhausted that night. It's, I was fortunate to be in that position where it was just kind of getting the ball rolling so I could kind of watch it grow up.
It's kind of become a hotbed now for lacrosse, but talk about what your high school experience like in Colorado, because I can imagine it was kind of a shit show then. And then, obviously it worked out for you though.
Yeah. So I was on a team that, we weren't the team that would be getting shit pumped, 15-0. We had a couple guys that went and played to college, but the interesting thing was so I played for a team called the Wheat Ridge Farmers, and I went to the high school Wheat Ridge, and we drew from, I think, 5 high schools. So even though we were playing under the Wheat Ridge name, it's still not a big enough sport, like you'll see in Maryland or, where every team just can draw from their student body. So we drew from 5 different schools and, we had a decent lineup. It was one of those, our first line could compete with anyone in the state, but as soon as, we tried to go deeper into the roster, we just took a nosedive and just started taking dumps all over the field. So one of my buddies, Sander, he committed to Denver. His younger brother, Pete, was a sophomore. He committed to Denver. We had a kid that go to Tufts. So, we were fortunate to have coaches that knew what they were doing. And we were fortunate to have like a good first line. So we're kind of on the up and up. And then unfortunately, Wheat Ridge's program is no longer in existence. They had to cut it last year. But that's a good and a bad thing. So that means that the schools that we were drawing from are getting their own programs. But instead of having one decent team at Wheat Ridge, now there's just like 4 or 5 dog shit teams across Jefferson County. So even though like we were never great and we never had like a true chance to win a state championship when we would go up against, the Cherry Creeks, the Kent Denvers, it was still a pretty damn good learning experience. And that's unique in Colorado, because a team like Wheat Ridge to have a good coaching staff is pretty rare. So,
yeah, and I mean personally, you had a pretty good high school career, having back-to-back all-state accolades at Wheat Ridge High School. How did you kind of go about your process to choosing your route to go to Notre Dame? Did you have any other schools that were interested in you, or how did you just end up picking there?
So pretty interesting story actually is as again, like nothing is really that unique about my situation. Like, I was a bit of a late bloomer. So, I'd see like the freshman, sophomore guys that were already getting looks because, they hit puberty early and, my balls didn't drop until I was a junior in high school. So when my junior year happened, I started to put on a little bit more weight. I was still a bit of a pinner. I was like 170, 175. But, I started to separate myself athletically from some of my peers. And Maryland was actually the team that jumped on me first because my club coach, Nate Watkins, he is a Maryland alumni. And he pulled a lot of strings and just said like, hey, listen, this kid, he's not the best lacrosse player, but he's a good enough athlete where it will, like, you'll want to work with him. So I committed to Maryland my junior year. And then my senior year, I actually started playing some pretty good football. And there was some interest from some football teams, nothing too big at the time, Colorado School of Mines, University of Montana, just some 1AA schools. But, kind of that process made me reevaluate because I'm just going to be honest, like I like football more than I like lacrosse. I always have, I always will. It's like the sport that I wish that I, could have been a little bit better at. But, when I was getting some of those looks, I was like, oh, if this is something that I can pursue, then I don't want to have any restrictions from Maryland. I don't want a Division I school taking a look at my profile and saying, oh, this kid's already going to play lacrosse at Maryland. Like, we don't have a chance. So I actually decommitted from Maryland to pursue football options. And funny enough, I was building up a damn good season until we ran into a team called Valor Christian, and that had Christian McCaffrey and a shitload of good players on there. I think there were like 3 NFL players and like 15 D1 commits, and they just beat the piss out of us. Like if you go back and I've watched that game since, and it was not good. I just got my shit pumped. And I think that was a lot of kind of what the college coaches were watching, because as soon as that game happened, it kind of went radio silent. And then I was like, perfect. Like I decommitted from the best lacrosse school to pursue football, and now I fucking suck at football. So, I just shot myself in the dick there. But luckily, I had put together a good football season, and there were some weird connections. An accountant that my dad knows, he's like a Notre Dame grad, like a big booster, and he knows the Arlotta family, John Arlotta. And if you know Notre Dame, it's like, the John and Bobby Arlotta offensive endowed, like the offensive coordinator position was endowed by this family, the head coach, the lacrosse stadium. These are like the top players. So I had this article that was written about me about how I was balancing football and lacrosse in the Denver Post. And then my dad's buddy sent it to John Arlotta, who sent it to Jerry Byrne. And having never seen me play live, or, he was at the tournaments and I just didn't make an impression, Coach Byrne recruited me off of some YouTube football highlights, as well as, just as well as word of mouth and talking to coaches and stuff like that. So it's a pretty unconventional story, just in the sense that I decommitted to try and find another sport that didn't pan out whatsoever. And then my final decision was actually between the Air Force Academy and Notre Dame. I pretty good student in high school. I really, it kind of came down to a 50-50 between Notre Dame and Air Force. And bottom line, I just was a 17-year-old kid. And I was like, I kind of just want to fuck around. And if I go to Air Force, there's going to be a lot less fucking around than if I go to Notre Dame. So.
Yeah, you obviously did pretty good at Notre Dame. Will said obviously in your bio, All-American, All-ACC. You actually took a decent amount of face-offs too. So talk about kind of transitioning to your first year being primarily a 1-2 punch at the face-off to, after that becoming, second line midfield, moving up to the first line, and then, eventually being the All-American you were.
Yeah, so it's a pretty interesting story, just in the sense that as good as you can get coached in high school, it just is such a different level in college. So I had good coaches for high school, but at the end of the day, when the practices are structured the way that they were, and when your teammates, aren't as invested, really, it's very difficult to get prepared for Division I. So I was always like a decent athlete, but my lacrosse IQ, like, I was a complete dipshit on the field. I'd be like, oh, hey, Coach Byrne, like, I got my guy. Why are you yelling at me that we got scored on? Like, my guy didn't score. So like freshman year was just completely overwhelmed by team defense, completely overwhelmed by offense. And I was the main faceoff guy at my high school. And I was like, oh, well, why don't I give faceoffs a try? Because if I win, I'm doing good. If I lose, I'm doing bad. Like, I know what's happening. Whereas if I play defense and the whistle blows, like, I'm looking over, like, am I going to get bitched out or am I going to get like praise? Like, I had no idea. So, I went in trying to do like regular grip, trying to beat the whistle, shit like that, just stuff that doesn't work. So it took an entire fall ball and like the first half of the season to, get the moto grip, get the stance, like be able to compete at the college level. And once I got that, I kind of just progressed naturally. I was like, okay, I have a way to see playing time. So I kept up doing faceoffs all 4 years. And then sophomore year, I had known the defense enough to be trusted to stay on the field. Junior year, I was trusted enough to stay on the field and then push offense and, trap the faceoff guy and get a couple reps on offense. And then by senior year, I had already been facing off for 3 years. So I was, splitting time as the main faceoff guy. I was confident enough on offense, and, I had really grown physically to be good on offense, good on defense. Like, I never really excelled at anything, but if there was a hole that needed to be filled, I had probably done it over the last 4 years. So, I talk to high school kids all the time, and, they're just like, what can I do to get playing time freshman year? And I'm like, first off, don't worry about that. Like, if you go in with thinking I need to get playing time, you're fucked, because you're slower than you think, you're dumber than you think, like, you're weaker than you think, because you're 18 going against 21-year-olds. Like, just focus on what you can do day to day. And for me, that started off with like, I can at least face off and not make a complete jackass out of myself. And then it just kind of escalated from there, going from being scared to being a little bit confident to being like, all right, I know what the hell I'm doing and I can teach these freshmen. So it was, just a pretty linear path up.
Obviously, you got to play for Coach Corrigan, who is longest tenured head coach right now in lacrosse. I think he's done 32 or 33 seasons now.
Long time. Yeah.
What makes him and Notre Dame so special to you? Obviously, you're a big football guy, so I'm assuming the football team and maybe Rudy kind of made a nice
don't compare me to Rudy. Don't do that to me.
I'm not doing that. Don't worry. But talk about kind of what he did, what he's done for Notre Dame, and what makes Notre Dame so special. Because it's kind of like Hopkins in Maryland, where like you either hate that school or you love that school.
Yeah. So it is a polarizing school, and a lot of that just comes from the history of it. Like, I'm going to be that alumni that's talking about how we're the best college football pro, there's that whole aspect of it. But what Corrigan specifically has done is he's just done a great job of, and it's going to sound like every other pitch if you're making a school, but like just building the culture around this team of like, listen, like you do things the right way, but that doesn't mean that you're not having fun. Like he totally understands, go out, have a couple beers, like go out, don't get in trouble, but just be a kid, enjoy it. But if you're going to do that, you better be taking care of what you're doing in the classroom, what you're doing on the field. And if your social life is starting to impact what you're doing on the team or how your grades are, like we'll make sure that you get on the right track. So like the beauty of Corrigan is, sometimes on the field, I just be like, son of a bitch, like this, I am going to fight this guy. Like I can't stand it. And then as soon as the whistle ends, like as soon as practice is over, he makes sure if he was tough on you, he's like, hey, Nick, come here. Like, how are your classes going? Like, you have any internships lined up? Like, how's this? How's that? So like, first and foremost, you need to know that your coach gives a shit about you and he cares about his players as much as any coach I've had. And then the second part that makes it truly special and different is when you have a tenured coach like that, that's been in the program for so long, especially if it's, a good academic school like Notre Dame, that alumni base is ridiculous. He has 32 years of some really well-connected guys on Wall Street and commercial real estate, on ESPN, on this, on that. Like everybody that had an interest in a specific industry, he's coached someone that's, the senior vice president. This guy's dad is, the CEO of this. And, it does come off as a little elitist, but just like the network and the opportunities that you get to go be like, a big swinging dick in whatever you want, there's probably going to be an avenue or an introduction. Luckily for me, I did zero of that and completely blew that. And, it's something that I didn't take advantage of to the full extent, but networking trips, just the introduction of, hey, I went to Notre Dame. Oh, like this and that. My buddy is an asshole Notre Dame fan. It's just kind of cool that it spans across the entire country and Corrigan has 30 years of alumni to connect you with.
Yeah, I'd say I kind of went through the same thing with Petro at Hopkins, where one minute you want to fight the guy and just absolutely dummy him, and the next moment you're in his office and you're having a heart to heart, and he shows how much he gives a shit. You obviously were saying you're a football guy. You kind of got to live your dream out being a football player at Notre Dame. You were a linebacker, I think, from what I saw.
Yeah. So that was another kind of just the dominoes happened to fall in the right spot. In a wild move, like the NCAA did something correctly with, if it's a fifth year or if it's a different sport, you get a fifth year of eligibility. And I actually didn't know about that until I think, again, like another one of my dad's buddies was like telling him about it because my dad just won't shut up. Anything I've ever done, like I come back and, like his buddies come over, Nick, congrats on that goal. Your dad sent it around. I'm like, thanks. I'd like to break news to you at some point.
Yeah, I get that.
and yeah, one of his buddies was like, did you know about that fifth year? Like, and he went to Montana, which is where I was looking to go right out of high school for football. So I still had some connections with the coaching staff, and then word kind of spread on campus. And one of the women's lacrosse players' dad, Pat Eilers, who is one of the greatest guys of all time, he actually came up to me after a lacrosse game and said, Nick, I heard you're taking a peek at Montana for a fifth year of football. Before you make any commitments, I'd love to just sit down and talk to you. And I actually had a concussion at the time. So I was like, sure, dude, whatever. Like, I don't really know what's going on. But we ended up starting a dialogue, and, one thing led to another. And actually 2 days after we lost to DU in the semifinals, I fly back, and then I'm running the 40-yard dash. I'm doing bench. I'm doing squat. I'm doing routes. I'm like doing all this shit in front of some of the football coaches. And after that workout, they offered me a position as a preferred walk-on, and I was like, couldn't say no to that. And then, I started out as a strong safety, and then they were like, hey, you're actually slow and white and weak. Go warm up the linebackers. They moved me over to linebackers. So that was the evolution of my football position.
I'm just saying, walk on. You know, it's a little. You know what I'm gonna say.
Hey, commit to it. Say it. Say it. Come on, I want to hear it.
No,
Yeah,
definitely.
it's a Rudy story. It's pretty Rudy.
First off, no, it's not. I'm not a huge fan of Rudy, and I'll tell you why. Because Rudy is the type of guy that gets people hurt at practice. Like, I remember, and we can get into it in a little bit, but like when I'm at rookie training camp for the Mammoth, when I'm low on the totem pole, I know I need to do two things. I need to prove myself as a good athlete, and I need to not like hurt John Grant Jr. Like those are the two things that I need to do. And Rudy's the type of guy to try and make a hero ground ball, go for the diving effort and take out Junior's knees. And that's not the type of guy that you want to be. So yes, Rudy's a great story. Love the soundtrack. Notre Dame, walk on football, never be able to escape that comparison, but know your fucking role and don't hurt the guys who are going to go out and win you a game. That's the big comparison that I need to make.
All right, I got it.
That's great. I grew up in a football family, and I mean, Rudy for me as a Canadian was like the best football movie ever. And I mean, just what Notre Dame means because of football, just from that Rudy movie is something truly special. And in 2015, you were drafted 60th overall in the MLL draft to the Denver Outlaws. What was your transition like going from football back to lacrosse?
Yeah, it was interesting. So just to clarify a little bit so I was taken as Mr. Irrelevant in the MLL draft. And the reason for that was because I had let all the GMs know that I was going to do football. So I wasn't going to be available for that 2015, 2016 or whatever it was. So I got drafted by the Outlaws, and then the supplemental draft happened, which was after my football career. And then Chesapeake actually took me. So I had I think like 5 or 6 games with Chesapeake, which was awesome. I got to know Annapolis a little bit, got to get buckled at Pussers and just have a great time there. And then I got traded to Denver, which was pretty cool. You know, I had grown up going to Mammoth games, going to Outlaws games. So that was a pretty cool transition. And, you know, honestly, humility has never been a big strong suit of mine. So like the transition that, you know, me going into the MLL was like, what's up, motherfuckers? Like, all right, I'm probably the best athlete here. Like, who wants a piece? And that worked okay. You know, I think I was at least funny enough, and I could make people laugh with like my overblown personality, that I wasn't like truly being a cocky asshole about anything. And, you know, it's almost like a bit that I do, but just like, hey, what's up, guys? Like, I'm like, where's Tommy Kelly? Like, I'm the best face-off guy on the team now. Like, what's up? Just dumb shit like that, but still making sure that like I know my role as, you know, I dodge and I move it, or I'm playing defense, or what, you know, just kind of like what I was in college. Just if there's a need, I can fill it, but I'm going to make you guys laugh. And, you know, I've always gotten along in the locker room, and it was a freaking awesome experience just to like, oh, there's Eric Law. Like, I've hated him my entire was some of the most fun I've ever had in my life. Like, I was playing really good ball. And, you know, we had a saying like, win the game, win the post game. And we were doing a lot of both. And, you know, it doesn't get any better than that. So, you know, rookie year, we won the championship, made a ton of friends. I still keep in contact with all them. So that was the easiest transition ever, just because it was so much damn fun.
What was it like winning back-to-back in the MLL? It must have been pretty cool, especially doing it in Denver.
Yeah, so just another little clarity point. I didn't actually win back-to-back. That back-to-back year, I was on the second part of. And then, so I was on the Outlaws for 3 years. We won in 16, lost in 17, and won in 18. So we won 2 out of 3, but it was never back-to-back. But regardless, like, it just, I mean, again, this is going to sound like a rehearsed line, but it was mostly a testament to the locker room and just like the guys that were in there. A lot of times you'll see guys that are just, you know, they're posting on Instagram like 30 seconds after the game ends. Like they get done with the locker room, like they get done with the game, go in and post on Twitter and, you know, text and shit like that. And we would always go in and we would make our trainer, who would be like taping our ankles, we would make him shotgun a beer. And we would all like grab a beer and just like go clown in the showers and talk shit to each other and just like have a blast. And then it'd be like, all right, what's the play? And, you know, just for a bunch of people that like didn't really give a shit about anything but winning, like that makes a lot more difference than the one guy who, you know, is going to try and make the highlight reel play so that he can post it. And the one guy that can try and do this or try and do that. We were all just like, yeah, I don't, coach, just tell me what to do. We don't give a shit as long as we keep racking up wins. So that was an awesome team. And that locker room was still to this day one of the most fun locker rooms I've ever been a part of.
You got to play with I got to play with him a little bit at the end of his box career, but obviously, in my mind, the greatest player of all time, John Grant Jr., which probably was pretty cool. Obviously, before he did the whole coach back to player, coming out of retirement, and then going to Air Force after you went there. So I don't know. Maybe Jude has a little crush on you.
Yeah, I mean, he still owes me because I left and, you know, I pretty much gave him my job. You know, Air Force was like, yeah, you know, we don't really know this guy. He's Canadian, you know, he's bald. And I said, hey, bald guys are good. Canadians are good. Give him a look. I didn't have anything to do with his hire, but I love taking credit for it. And I remember I literally grew up watching, you know, John Grant Jr. in the Pepsi Center, Loud House. You know, he was all of our favorite players, you know, blah, blah, blah. But it was really cool just playing against him. And I remember Mammoth training camp. You know, it's box. And he's trying to back me down. And this was right after football season. So I was 235. I was like the strongest I had ever been. And, you know, while I fucking sucked at box, I was like, oh, if someone's trying to back me down, I can not let that happen, even if it's someone as big as June's. And he tried to back me down and I didn't really let him. And then he passed it and, you know, like he did a cut or whatever. And he was just like, oh, Jesus, you know, you're a strong little fucker, aren't you? And I remember like I called my dad like after that practice and I was like, Dad, like, you know, John Grant Jr. said that I was strong. So things are going really well. And, you know, I didn't tell him that I had just been getting shit pumped every other rep that I was taking. But I was like, yeah, no, like things are going really well. And, you know, John Grant Jr. said this. And everybody has like their wide-eyed moment with you. Like Eric Law on Twitter, I don't know if you saw, he called him Mr. Junior the first time he ever met. Like, it's just cool shit like that. And we, you know, I still keep in touch with him pretty regularly. You know, we're trying to get a golf game going, like with Brent Adams, and you know, I'll call him just to check in, see how things are going at Air Force, and you know, shit. That's one of the things where I can look back and I'm like, you know, regardless of how my indoor career went, that's like the crowning jewels. I get to call someone like John Grant Jr. my friend. So my 10-year-old self would be like, oh, like that's cool. And, you know, whenever I feel like shit, I'm like, oh, well, all right, I still got that going for me.
I mean, being fellow ball guys, you ever take any of his hat advice? Junes loves wearing his nice hats there to cover up the hair.
I do. I have a picture of it. I hope I can show you guys. I posted it on Instagram, but it was after there's always a gala. And, you know, in classic fashion, you kind of just go and have some drinks and get excited. But like, yeah, he let me borrow his hat while we were all tuned up, and I posted a picture of it and just started getting shit on in the comments. But I'm not going to lie, I kind of have been wanting to take that look for a while, but I'm just too big of a pussy to commit to it.
Oh, that's great. You obviously made the flip, obviously, when the Rebels made their PLL and became a member of the Redwoods. Talk about that change of you really went from lacrosse being a weekend warrior to becoming a full-time lacrosse player to a certain degree, going to the PLL. Talk about that change.
Yeah, so I think the best part about the PLL is just kind of their way that they engage the fans like we haven't seen in professional lacrosse. And what I mean by that is there are now people that you see, and regardless of what your views on it, like social media followings can be monetized in a simple way. And, you know, me and Brent Adams, Matt Kavanaugh, and a couple other college buddies started this company called Clinic Sports. And all we do is we just take road trips around and, you know, we coach in areas like Montana, like Wyoming, like Idaho that, you know, are similar to how I started. You know, probably just a group of dedicated dads that don't know fuck all about the X's and O's, but love to see their kid happy. So we go in and we're like, hey, let's help you not only understand the game better, we'll coach your kids, but we'll help you out too. And it's really funny just the questions that we get asked. You know, like, I'm the guy that punched Blaze Rubin. Like, that's just how I'm known. I haven't had any other highlights, but that, you know, be that, whether I like it or don't like it, I'm answering questions every camp about that whole thing. If, you know, I got in a scuffle in the MLL, I've, you know, had some decent highlight reel stuff, but nobody really knew about it because it wasn't produced well enough and blasted out to the public. So, you know, there are some pros and there are some cons with what, you know, they're describing as a social media driven league. And that's far and away the best thing about the pros, is that you're able to monetize that following and kind of leverage being a household name in the sport of lacrosse, so that kids in Idaho, you know, I'm marketing myself more as like, hey, I play for the Redwoods in the PLL. Whereas previously it'd be like, hey, I played at Notre Dame. Isn't that a great college? And who gives a shit what else has happened? So, you know, that transition is, you know, to their credit, their operations team has done a fantastic job just with venues, you know, equipment, all that good shit. But being able to just like do it as a coach and as, you know, someone who's just excited to be able to coach in a place like Boise, you know, everybody's following the PLL regardless of where you live. And that's like such a shift. So.
You brought up the fight with Blaze, so I'll bring it up too. Yeah, I mean, you probably expected this at some point.
Yeah, of course.
Who started it?
That's a good question. It's either Mark Glacini or Troy Ray. Those are the two guys that are definitely at fault. Like, Mark Glacini, like, quote unquote, tackled Perkovic, but Perkovic was literally just like trying to bowl him over. So I don't really blame that. But then Troy Ray came in and like smoked him with a check while he was on the ground, like kind of as the whistle was blowing. And, you know, I was just kind of expecting to go in and be like, all right, like, hey, don't do that. I'm going to push you like twice, call you a pussy, and then like we can get on with the game. So like as I go to confront Troy Ray, Jack Rowlett fucking smokes me on the right side of my helmet. My helmet gets checked off. And then I turn to confront him. And as I turn to confront him, I get suplexed, which didn't feel good. Like, Blaze is a fucking unit for doing that. So I was like, okay, I'm going to step in, like, call Troy Ray, whatever name that came to me first. And then, you know, maybe do a little face wash, you know, like any hockey scrum around the goalie. So I step in, I get my helmet cross-checked, and then I get suplexed. And I'm like, okay, this just went like from a little scrum to, all right, that gives me the green light to throw a punch. And he did the most egregious thing. So I was like, all right, well, still going to punch him. And surprisingly, and I think this is how I know everybody was kind of understanding, like, Glacini and Jared Newman both kind of were just like, okay, Nick, like, you just punched our goalie, like, give it a rest. It's over now. When normally, like, when I punched him, I fully expected to kind of just get my ass beat by everyone on the team. But I think just given all the circumstances, I get up, I punch him, which looked sick in slow-mo. I'm so glad they got that in slow-mo. Like, in real time, it doesn't look bad, but you slow it down, it's like, okay, that's a little bit better. And then, yeah, I was fully expecting to just kind of get my shit pumped in, and then everyone was just like, oh, whoa, okay, tough guy, like, it's over now. And literally five seconds after, like, Blaze and I were kind of walking off, and we were still a little mad, but we were kind of like, okay, like, fucking sick punch with a glove and a helmet. I'm like, sick body slam, like, dick. But he's a good dude. Like, Rowlett's a good dude. Ray's a good dude. Glacini, Perkovic, like, I think if there were some other characters that were involved, that could have had like some huge boil over potential. but for what it was just like a pretty funny scrap that, you know, I had to buy him a beer after the game just because mine looked cooler than his body slam. But I still get kids DMing me that I'm like an idiot and I'm a pussy. So it's pretty cool.
I was going to say, you're one of the few Americans that I've seen that are actually willing to, so I'll give you credits for that.
Well, no, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, not too many Americans are willing to actually do any of that, especially if I saw you in a box fight, it wouldn't surprise me.
No, and I think had gotten a couple more games under my belt, and it's so easy to just like talk about it, but I wanted to get one scrap in before my coaches decided that I should retire. And I remember we were playing New England, and I was talking to Paul Dawson, and I'm like, Paul, like, we were getting fucking smoked. We were losing like, 18-9. And I was like, all right, Paul, like, just walk me through the basics. How do I fight? I'm going to try and go get in a scrap. And he's like, drop the gloves. And Nick, the big thing is patience. Like, grab their shirt, make sure you get their good grip of the sweater, and then just wait for him and then take your opportunity. And I was like, that's pretty easy to say when you're 6'6".
That's a good guy to learn from.
Oh, fuck. And he's the best guy ever. And he's getting more Twitter active, but he's not very good at Twitter. And I remember I was like getting ready to go fight, and the person that I was like shoulder to shoulder with and kind of like stood up to was Suter. And
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. And I was like getting ready to drop the gloves, and I can't remember which teammate came over. They were like, Nick, no, you're good. You're good. Like, let's save it for the next shift. So they were like, yeah, like, I love that you were going to go try and get in a fight, but we don't need to be losing the game and then watch, this guy who it's his first game back from getting his ball sack stitched together just to get his ass beat. Like, nobody should be on that bad of a string of luck. So, easy to say that I would have loved to get in a fight. Like, I enjoy doing MMA. I enjoy boxing. I enjoy wrestling. But I was still so bad at indoor that I was just like, all right, just don't make a huge egregious mistake on defense, let alone go worry about a fight.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, lacrosse fights, especially in the indoor game, it's literally a street fight. And I mean, to square off with suits in your first professional fight, I think that would have been quite the experience, to say the least. So
it would have been a mistake. It would have been a mistake.
It definitely would have been a mistake. And I'm man enough to admit I don't want that smoke. So.
No, that's all good. We're going to get into some fun here. We're going to do our this or that segment. So basically, Jake's going to give you two options. You have to choose one of them as quick as you can without any explanation.
All right,
here we go. Ready?
Yeah.
All right. Mile High or Pepsi Center?
Pepsi Center.
Transition goal, transition assist.
Goal. Jesus.
You'd be surprised. Some people will say the assist.
Okay.
Chipotle's non-existent. Are you going to Moe's or Qdoba?
Moe's.
You hate Qdoba, don't you?
I don't. I would eat it if I'm hungry. I would never eat it if there was either of those restaurants next to it.
Steak or chicken?
Steak.
Seals or mammoth?
Mammoth.
Pints in the basement or shots at a bar?
Pints in the basement. Oh my God.
Favorite field shot, down the alley or turn in the corner?
Down the alley.
Get beat up taking every face off or serve every bench minor penalty?
Serve every bench minor penalty.
Notre Dame lacrosse or Notre Dame football?
Football.
MLL or PLL?
PLL.
Ski or snowboard?
Ski.
Better movie, Jackass or Dumb and Dumber?
Jackass. That's controversial, but I'll stand by it.
There we go. You passed.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I mean, down the alley or turning the corner, those don't make, the top 10. It's just any sort of step down where you don't have a defender at you. You can just rip it. Because I'm not confident enough on my alley shots anymore. I used to be. So.
Yeah, I'm definitely not confident with my alley shots too. I'm not the best field player in the world, that's for sure. So,
God, I remember. Yeah, my just real quick story. My first indoor game was against Georgia, and I took an alley shot like a fucking stupid idiot American, and it was my first ever shift, and like I got it. I was running tranny, and I did like, I'm gonna get it like my right to right split, and then I tried to throw a near side twister, and I remember like I think we either ended up getting the loose or whatever happened, and I ran off, and Patty Coyle was just like, okay, like you get that out of your system, like don't fucking do that again. I was like, yes, sir. Like I just took my first shot at Pepsi Center. You can't say anything that's going to kill this high, even though it was the worst shot of all time.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's definitely a big adjustment coming from the outdoor game to the indoor game. And can you just kind of talk about that transition that you did have at the beginning of coming into the NLL as being a professional field player?
Yeah, it's a different sport, and I think it translates well to some people and it doesn't for other. I think I was right in kind of the middle of that, where I was a big enough guy where I could fight through some of those picks that I didn't see coming. Being a bigger body helps. So I certainly had things that were to my advantage, but at the end of the day, my entire lacrosse career has been like, okay, play good one-on-one defense. And Coach Burns' pick philosophy was, do not pay attention to the pick. It is not your responsibility. So coming from that mindset that I had played for 4 years and it was driven into my head at Notre Dame, to when you hear open, you better open or you're going to wind up face first on the turf because someone's smoking you from behind. It was a very difficult and, to be honest, a slow transition for me. Indoor and pro lacrosse in general, you're not playing every day. And even when you're in practice, you're not getting a whole lot of live good reps. So, just when I would think that I kind of have it figured out, I'd get a chance at a game and I had it figured out at 80% speed. And when you ramp it up to 100, like that's a huge change. So, my pivots and embracing the pick, going out and cross-checking, not letting people get underneath. Like there are all these little intricacies and you cannot get things incorrect because you don't have the space to make up for it. So, my mistakes were fatal mistakes in indoor, and my mistakes in outdoor were like, okay, I could probably recover. I could probably do this. So the transition is just mind-blowingly difficult because every strength that I had, aside from just strength and kind of just size, didn't translate well. So I struggled a lot. Greg Downing is one of the best players I think of all time. And, thank God for him, because he took me aside after almost every rep. And he's like, Nick, just listen, like, let's walk through this. I say open, you have to open. Otherwise, they're going to score a goal. Like I say shoot, you have to go shoot and get on his hands, and I'll help you as long as possible. So, I don't think people realize that, and I sure as shit didn't. I'm watching box, and I'm like, oh, big, strong guys, it'll be able to translate, stick skills. It is a completely different game, and credit to everyone that's been able to make that transition. That's not an easy thing to do.
You and I have a mutual friend, and Connor Kelly. You got to play with him in San Diego, and I actually lived with CK in New York this year. I think you owe him a little revenge at some point for what he did. You want to go through? Well, he's known for shooting, and he's known for shooting a lot, and you got to deal with that firsthand.
Yeah, now he's known for his shot velocity and his accuracy. It's not the biggest target, but Connor Kelly did put me in the hospital. Funny story, just in general. I'll take you through kind of the shorter version of it, but bottom line, I was fighting to crack a roster, and I was driving and I realized I had forgotten my cup at home. And I'm like, okay, do I go back and maybe show up late, or do I just risk it? And I was like, I'm fighting. I've been busting my ass. I'm not going to show up late and have that be the reason. And one of the big tendencies in indoor lacrosse is you need to get in the shooting lane. So, the perfect storm of I'm in the shooting lane, I'm getting big. He takes kind of like this low-to-low shot, and it hits me like point blank. Like normally sometimes it'll scrape or like hit you like in the dick or something. No, this was like point blank on the testicle, which you can imagine how that felt. I'll just let you, think about that. But to be honest, like, it didn't hurt terribly right off the bat. I was like, oh, like, okay, you know, we've all been hitting the balls, like, just walk it off, shake it off. And it got progressively worse over the rest of practice. So, like, there was like a half hour left in practice. And again, I'm like, you know, I'm not stopping practice just so because my, you know, hey coach, like, you know, my balls hurt. Like, okay, Nick, like, see you on the bench or see you in the stands for the next game. And you know, practice gets over, and funny enough, the coaches actually come up to me and were like, Nick, you played great this practice. You're going to be suiting up against, I think it was Calgary. Like, you're going to be playing against Calgary tomorrow. Like, get your mind right. We're really excited to watch you. And I was like, perfect. Just as a heads up, you know, I took a shot, and I just talked to the trainer. He just wants me to go get it checked out. So I drive myself to UCSD Medical, which was like, you know, half hour away, and, you know, check myself in, and it's still just kind of, you know, it's like boom, 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 boom. And they do an ultrasound, which was the worst part of the entire thing. God, that actually was not fun. And so I'm sitting in just like on the gurney, like in the, you know, waiting room or whatever, you know, I'm in the hospital gown, and I'm just waiting, and this nurse pops his head in, and he goes, hey, like, I'm sure the doctor told you, but you know, you're getting prepped for emergency surgery, right? You ruptured your testicle. And I was like, no. So I remember calling my girlfriend, and I remember calling my parents, and I was like, yeah, you know, like, they might have to remove it, but like the doctor was saying, oh yeah, even if we have to remove it, you'll still have a full functioning life. You'll still be good. And I'm like, that's somewhat reassuring. Like, thanks. But they put me under. I came to the next morning, and the recovery sucked. It's not like you can do PT because it's soft tissue. Like, you can't rehab your balls. So they just said, you just have to lay down for 6 weeks. And the first 2 weeks, I was able to walk for 5 minutes every 3 to 4 hours. So I'd just be laying down, and then it's like, perfect, 3 hours. And then I'd just get up and kind of like be like an old guy. I'd carry a lacrosse stick and just like let him hang down and take a lap around the neighborhood in excruciating pain. And then I'd go back and lay down for another, you know, 4 hours. So made the full recovery. And, you know, Connor did apologize. There's some pretty gnarly pictures out there, which if we're ever in person, I'd be happy to show you, but not going to send those over the internet. But no, Connor Kelly made up for it. We were at the Shore Club. I don't know, after everything had happened, and, you know, he picked up, I think, like 5 Red Bull vodkas and a couple beers. So we hashed it out. He's a good dude. But also, like, fuck you. That really hurt. So
Yeah. Oh God, I can't believe. Yeah. Well, it's CK. I get it. Obviously, you took a step away from the game. Do you have any plans of going back to play box lacrosse?
Not really. Especially if I'm not going to be living in a city that has a team. You know, I'm living in Denver right now. If I have plans to stay in Denver, you know, I think that'd be awesome. My girlfriend and I we're talking about moving to Boise, actually. You know, if something happens where I'm staying here for a while, you know, I might try to reach back out to the Mammoth and just be like, hey, you know, would you have me for a training camp? But, you know, I have to be realistic. You know, there are a shitload of younger guys now that, you know, I recently turned 27. So it's not like, you know, like I'm 22, 23. And I kind of have to wait. Do you want to be in your late 20s battling for a roster spot, doing that? Like, is it really worth it? So, you know, I don't have any plans right now. And I don't really have any regrets about, you know, I did give it my all for what the league was. And, you know, I didn't go and play junior A or, you know, any of that stuff, but I don't think I would have done that anyways. So, you know, no regrets, nothing like that. I made, you know, a lot of really good buddies. You know, I got to know Dylan Ward, Taylor Stewart, you know, all those fucking beauties. So I don't have any plans to return, but I definitely plan on attending and just kind of keeping my eye and watching all that shit.
Boise, Idaho is definitely an underrated party city. That's for sure.
It's underrated in every aspect. I tell all my buddies here, and they're like, why Boise? I'm like, everything you love about Denver is a little bit elevated in Boise. Less traffic, just as much partying, mountains, skiing, booze, and all the good stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And we're going to talk a little bit about your Twitter here. You're at Nick Ossello on Twitter. One of the better personalities for sure in the game of lacrosse. And sometimes you just say what's on your mind. And, at the end of the day, you're entitled to free speech. And is there a reason why you love the Twitter game so much?
I just think it's the perfect platform for like a quick thought that you have in your mind that might be funny, just blast it out. If you fuck up trying to be funny on an Instagram post, it's going to be there for a while. If you fuck up on Twitter, like I changed my profile picture and it's stupid and nobody really likes it. So I'm like, yeah, whatever. Like I'll tweet a couple more times and that'll be gone. And then like, it's just difficult to watch a lot of these guys that it's like, oh, your entire personality is working out and lacrosse. Like those are the only two things. Like I follow a shitload of guys on lacrosse and so much of it is just this cookie cutter. I play lacrosse, I coach lacrosse, I work out, I eat right, like I do this, well, look at us, we're wacky, we're playing video games now. Like, wow, this is so good. So like there's so many guys in the league that are the funniest guys I know that you just want to sit down, have 15 to 20 beers with and talk about anything. And nobody's really doing that. So I kind of just started getting frustrated. And like, that's where Negative Fridays started, was just like, I'm so sick of seeing like workout challenge Friday, tag 3 of your buddies and do 15 push-ups. And I'm just like, just shut the fuck up. Like you're not this guy in real life. Like this isn't how the lacrosse world is, I swear. So I started doing all that. And like, I think it's fun for interaction. I think it's good that you can't type out long paragraphs and really do that. And, it's just a blast. And like the people that take themselves seriously, I literally can't imagine what that would be like. So I go on, I try to make a couple people laugh. Like if you're being a dick, I'm going to be a dick about, like what you look like or who you are. And I would expect the same in return. So.
Oh God, I think Negative Friday has slowly become one of the favorite things in my family. I know everyone loves seeing what you have to say. I think it's funny. One thing you got a lot of criticism was for your GOAT list, greatest of all time lists, where you had a bunch of people come at you. So I believe you had Tiger, Michael Phelps, Gretzky, Michael Jordan, and I forget who your fifth was.
Usain Bolt.
And then I think every Canadian came at you like Gretzky's number one. Talk about that.
I grew up loving hockey. Like the late 90s, early 2000s Avalanche were my favorite teams. Like I liked football more than I liked hockey, but the Avalanche were my team through and through. So it blew my mind that like Tiger Woods and Michael Phelps, like Tiger Woods, who changed the sport forever from a marketing perspective, people who know fuck all about golf are Tiger Woods fans. Like I think he literally changed the world as much, if not more, than any other athlete that has ever existed. In objectively the most boring sport to watch of all time. Like that is just impossible to do. And then number 2, Phelps, like I think his resume speaks for himself. And number 3, Wayne Gretzky is the greatest hockey player of all time, bar none. Hockey is prevalent in Canada, Scandinavia, the US, Russia, couple other countries. And he's so good that I put him at number 3 above the best track and field athlete of all time. And Curtis Dixon made it seem like I slapped his mother in the face when all I did was put him as the third GOAT of all time, which is a ridiculously high ranking. And what they're failing to comprehend is just like, oh, like how good are you at hockey? like, yeah, hockey's hard, so you should put Gretzky higher. And I'm like, I never said hockey was easy. Like, do you even know look at how much records he still has. Look at how many points he is above the next second guy. And I'm like, it's fucking great. Great arguments, guys. Oh, Tiger Woods doesn't even have this, doesn't even have that. And I'm like, you guys are missing the fucking point. Like, Gretzky's the greatest hockey player of all time. There's no doubt about it. He's one of the all-time greats. Wayne Gretzky didn't change the entire world to where people from South Africa are wearing wearing Wayne Gretzky jerseys. People in South Africa, people in Mexico don't give a fuck about Wayne Gretzky, and you can't be the number one GOAT of all time if the entire world isn't encapsulated by who you are as a person. So, you know what? I'm done dealing with Canadians chirping me for having him at number three in the whole world. In the entire, out of 7.5 billion people, he's number 3, and they're making it seem like I'm Hitler for that. So I'm defending myself, and I'm standing by it.
Jesus Christ. Well, I you know what, I agree with your thing. I'm not going to be one to.
Do you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm one of the few Canadians who wouldn't put Gretzky one, so I'll probably get some backlash for that too. You talked about Dickey. Who are some guys in lacrosse you think have some of the best Twitter game, other than I assume you would put yourself at number 1?
Right up there. Logan Schuss, Curtis Dixon are a hell of a 1-2 punch. Depending on who you are as a person, like if you can not get mad, Garrett Epple is like the worst Twitter account I've ever seen, and I love it. So like if you're into just garbage, you got to follow, like Republican garbage, you got to follow that. Other people, shit, I'd have to check. I actually don't know too many others that I interact with consistently.
I would say Dixon and Schuss definitely. One I'll throw out there is Christian Del Bianco. I think Dixon rubs off him quite a bit, and that kind of has led to his Twitter game jumping through the roof.
He is great. I'm not sure he understands that. Like I'm, because I have that like build a wall to the north and keep Westberg and Canadians out. Like I think he thinks I actually mean that, because he'll tweet out this like, oh, hey, Nick, look at this. Is this happening in your country? And it's like, I don't know, some MAGA festival, like bunch of rednecks in Ohio. And I'm like, was there a joke there? Because if there was a joke, I'd love to be in on it. Him, and then the whole Trade Ward, like it might just be because I love him as a person, but like Dylan Ward's Twitter account, just like the whole Trade Ward and all that shit just cracks me up.
That was like, for I say a solid month, hashtag Trade War was probably the biggest thing in lacrosse Twitter game, at least.
Love it. And then Mikey Schlosser as well. I actually like hate everything that he tweets, but it's so Mikey that like I can't help it. So I don't know if you ever noticed, but I always respond to give him a blank out of 10 on most of his tweets, because he'll just tweet out something like gummy bears are so good. Like what, like the fuck is that? Like why do you need to say that? Mm-hmm. And then like we'll FaceTime each other and just do nothing but talk shit to each other. But he's a beauty.
So near the end of all of our shows, we always reach out to guys and have them see if they have any funny stories. So Connor Kiernan, one of your old SEAL buddies,
buddies being a loose term.
asked me to ask you about what happened with this cliff jumping incident, where apparently you were rescued with Garrett Epple.
It wasn't apparently. I was definitely rescued. I'll say, and again, I'll give kind of the brief version, but when we were getting ready for our inaugural season, it was like go out in San Diego and do something San Diego related. So I think like Casey Jackson did Anchorman, a bunch of guys did boring stuff like, hey, here's me playing wall ball, turn to the camera, come on out to Pechanga Arena. Like, blow it out your ass. Garrett Epple and I are going to do like the best thing ever. So we were looking up places to jump, and I'm working at the time in their office, and I'm talking to the guys that have lived there for years, and I'm like, yeah, is there like a good cliff jumping spot? I think it'd be pretty cool to, do that. And we're doing this whole SEALs thing. And they're like, yeah, this place Sunset Cliffs, but just make sure it's not low tide. Because, it's not that shallow. I don't want to blow out my knee going cliff jumping. So we look up the tide chart and we go at high tide, but I'm from Denver. You can imagine how much I know about what those numbers mean. I was just like, oh, like going at 10:30 is the perfect time. So little did I know it was the highest tide in like the last year and a half. Like comically, this is dangerous to even be in the ocean, let alone in Sunset Cliffs. So Epps and I drive over there, and we were sitting looking at the cliff and looking at the waves, and we're like, wow, these are some pretty big waves. But we're two stupid guys. We're like, did we come all the way out here to pussy out? No, like we're men, we're tough. So we jump in. As soon as we jump in, I'm like, oh, we're fucked. So you have to swim like 15 yards, but the waves are, up to the ceiling. And just as soon as you get a little bit over there, you get smoked back in. And there's like this crowd that was watching us, which honestly, thank God we didn't like do it at night or anything, but there was this crowd that was watching us. And some of them are like chirping us. They're like, you shouldn't jump in. And I'm like, well, what the fuck do you want me to do about it now? I'm like yelling back up to them. And, it went on for probably about 10 minutes, and it felt like, a lifetime. So the lifeguards come and get us. I have to get rescued from the jet ski on the boat back to the pier. Epple has to get rescued up the cliff. So, we get rescued, and I'm on the boat back, and my body's exhausted. Like my forearms are dead from trying to climb out. Like, there are my seawater, legs, adrenaline, all that shit. And so we get back to the pier, and the lifeguards are lunatics. They're like, yeah, thanks for giving us some action today, man. I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you guys? But we get back to the lifeguard stand, and there's like, signs, illegal, do not jump, like bad. And we're like, like people jump here all the time. So they were talking to me, and they were like, did you learn your lesson, or do we have to give you a fine as well? And, I'm like, my hands are shaking. I'm like, I'm fine. You don't have to give me the fine. And they were like, all right, you're free to go on your way. So they put some gauze and some Band-Aids on where I was bleeding and where I was scraped up. And then I had to walk a mile back to where my car was. And I don't know if Apple's dead. I don't know what's going on. So I remember asking, I was like, is my buddy okay? They're like, yeah, he's okay. And I was like, thank God. And I walked back, and that was like the funniest walk ever. Just like I'm in my shorts, and I have to walk a mile back to my car. And then I get my phone, and like I call Apple and like get all this shit. And like I see Apple, and like we give each other like the biggest hug, like, oh dude, like what the fuck? And then I started making the calls again. I was like, I called my parents, I called my girlfriend, I called the GM. I was like, hey mom, you're probably gonna see this on the news, but I had to get rescued. And she's like, oh, Jesus, Nick, like, what did you do? I'm like, oh, we jumped in, and I had to get rescued. The news is going to blow it out of proportion like they do. And yeah, learned a valuable lesson about tides, and shout out to me and Apple for surviving when weaker men would have perished.
That's definitely awesome, and we're glad you two are still with us today. We wouldn't get that great Twitter content without you being here today. So we're going to get into the final part of our podcast here. It's called our Play Until the Whistle segment. It's probably you probably have the same in the U.S., but recently in Ontario, there's been a lot of abuse towards lacrosse officials, and whether it's officials in any sport, there's a lot of abuse towards them. So what we always do is ask the players who their favorite official is and why.
I'm going to go first off, if you want to get better officials, you got to go after guys who are like my favorite referee of all time, Ed Hockley. I don't know if you guys know who that is. The NFL ref that's just absolutely jacked out of his mind. Like, if you get a ref that's bigger and stronger, like a guy that looks like Greg Gurenlian, bring him out of retirement and make him a ref. Like, if the ref can beat your ass, you're going to have a little bit more respect for it. So Ed Hockley's my favorite referee of all time because I don't like any of the lacrosse refs. And that's something that all professional college, everybody needs to look into. Get bigger, more intimidating refs, and you'll immediately get more respect. Even if they make a bad call, it's kind of cool to, you know, like offsides like that way, and like their arms popping out of their sleeve. That's going to look cool no matter what. So.
Yeah, for sure. And as a player, what do you think players could do to kind of limit the abuse towards the officials, or whether it's a coach or a player in the game of lacrosse?
I just stop playing like a dick. There are a ton of guys like the extra slash, you know, the extra bonus, you know, like when you get beat and you don't have a chance, you know, that extra slash, you know, the ref's going to be a dick. You're going to be a dick because you're playing like a dick. Like, just if everybody just stop being such a dick, there's probably going to be a lot better rapport between players and officials. So everybody just tone it down a little bit.
Yeah, I think, it's a very good point. Remaining calm and just trying to enjoy the game that we all love so much. So we appreciate you coming on here and talking with us today, and wish you the best of luck with the rest of your lacrosse career and all your future endeavors.
Thanks, boys. Really appreciate you having me, and I look forward to following along to everything that you guys are doing.
Thanks, Nick.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Sticks and Picks Lacrosse Podcast. Check out lacrosseunlimited.com for all your lacrosse needs. Don't forget to follow us on our social media pages on Instagram and Twitter at SticksPicksLax, and on Facebook at Sticks and Picks Lacrosse for more lacrosse content. A reminder that May is Mental Health Awareness Month in Canada. If you are able to, please consider donating to Trevor Sears' TCT Resiliency Initiative. For every $2 raised in the month of May, he will complete one burpee on June 1st. This is the last week of the 2020 Global Lacrosse Summit. So far, it's been a huge success, and we are proud to sponsor a grassroots event.